I saw was recorded.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
He's squeezing that noses.
What is that?
It's a little kitty.
Okay.
It's Halloween. Not happy.
Hello. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. We call this October 31st, 2019 meeting of the AMATS Policy Committee to order. The time is approximately 1:30. We'll do a quick roll call. Mr. Peterson?
Present.
Mr. Schutte?
Present.
Ms. Heil?
Here.
And myself present, so we have a quorum. Let's see. Quorum. So, Craig, will you please do the public involvement announcement?
Yep. All AMATS meetings are open to the public. If we have a business item, we'll have a presentation by consultant or a staff member, and then after that, the committee will be given a chance to discuss the matter, and after that, the public will be invited to comment.
That's good. Thank you, Craig. So, do we have approval of the agenda?
Move to approve?
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded. Do you have any changes?
Could we add an informational item on the federal certification review?
Any objections to that?
Not happy about it either, but
Okay. We'll go ahead and add that item in.
thank you.
Is that, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, is that under an action item or is that a
Just
project?
informational.
Information.
You can put it under general information.
Thank you.
So, that will be
9.
Okay. All right. Any objections to adopting the agenda as modified? No objections? Agenda is approved. And let the record show that Mr. Welton showed up.
Pick that up like you're going to hit him with
It's that time of year.
What you get for getting late.
There you go.
Trick or treat.
So, Mr. Welton, the agenda is approved as submitted, but we did add a Federal Highways AMATS certification update as an informational item on the.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's the letter that's saying it.
That's right. Okay, we have before us the minutes for the September 3rd, 2019 for approval. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
Move to approve of September 3rd minutes.
Sorry, just point of clarification, can we move and approve them both, or do you have to do them individually?
I like individually. Why is there edits?
Okay.
So we have a motion to approve. We have a second by Mr. Peterson. Okay, any changes or discussions? None. Any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none. The September 3rd, 2019 minutes are approved. And, okay. Second item, we have before us the minutes from the September 26th, 2019 for approval. Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second?
Moved to approve and seconded. Any changes or discussions? Hearing none. Any objections for approving the minutes? Hearing none. The September 26, 2019 minutes are approved. All right, moving on to agenda item 6, safety performance targets. Craig, will you be presenting that?
Yes. So the performance measures grew out of the FAST Act, and we have all sorts of different safety measures or performance targets that we need to set and then track, et cetera. And the safety ones are the ones that we have to do every year. Again, this time around, just a reminder, our choices are we can establish our own targets, or we can agree to support the state DOT's target. State DOT's target, right? And so, again, this time around, we were active in the discussions when the state set their target. I was on all the conference calls related to it, and very happy with what went into that, and it seems like it made a lot of sense as we were going to set those targets. So staff is again suggesting that we support the state's safety targets for 2020. The TAC heard this 3 weeks ago at this point and also recommended supporting the state's targets. And you should have in your packet the state's targets right behind the memo. Happy to attempt to answer questions on that document.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the committee on this? Mr. Weddle?
And I think we've done this before, so I just want to make clear. So we just broadly accept them, and do we track these because it's by 100 million vehicle miles traveled? Do we have data just for Anchorage?
I believe the state has data individually. The challenge is that we don't have the ability to, I don't have the staff to track all this individually. I believe the state does track this information by area. I'm not 100% certain of that. I don't know if anyone in the room has an idea. Jim is shaking his head yes. Mr. Amundson is shaking his head yes. So we have that. We can get that to you, but we're just supporting the state's targets. Just as a reminder, there are ramifications if the state does not meet their targets. The NPO does not get penalized if the state does not meet their targets. So
It'd be nice to know if we beat these I would hope so, less than that number of fatalities and so on. Nice to see those numbers, if we set a goal, see how we do. Jim, is that hard to get, Jim?
There's a report, we'll get you a copy.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, any other comments from the committee?
Yeah, just a question that kind of builds off of John's related to that. This is the second time that we've seen this, and so I think, was the target lower in the 2019 target period? I think it was 70 people, wasn't it? Or 70, fatalities. Is that correct, Steph?
I
Aaron
vaguely
shaking his
remember.
head.
The 2018 targets, I believe, was 70. The 2019 targets was 75.
75, so we're creeping up.
Yes.
And so as a follow-up, if I may, that would seem to indicate that we're going the wrong direction in the eyes of FHWA, but we're not going to be penalized for that.
That is correct.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
So what does this do then?
Well, when we do our ranking criteria, et cetera, for the TIP and for the FTP, we are to take these things into account and make sure that the different projects that we have in the hopper are going to be trying to do things to lower these numbers. And the numbers are just allowing us to track and see how we're doing.
Okay. And then last question, if I may. So this is performance measures across the spectrum, old roads, new roads, et cetera. But because we're seeing this shift in the fatality numbers, we are increasing the importance or emphasizing the importance of eliminating fatalities as we move forward in project, approval, scoping, et cetera. Is that a way to read this?
Yeah, absolutely. For example, part of what we're doing with the criteria that we're working on right now in the update to the criteria is we're taking into account the work that was done for the Vision Zero plan and using those, more specific set of plans, et cetera, to try and bring those numbers down. We have a lot more information and we have a great implementation section in the Vision Zero plan to try and work through that. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so, talking about Vision Zero, we've got a very long way to go. We can't even see the horizon if we're going backwards on some of these numbers. And so, is any plans to try to reach that target or how to reduce fatalities? Does this have something to do with road construction, or is this just bad drivers?
I'm not qualified to answer that particular question, but I would just suggest, as I answered to Mr. Schutte, is that the Vision Zero plan is a great starting point for laying out some specifics of things that can be done to help move the needle, to help lower that number. And part of what we're doing at AMATS, it was not an AMATS plan, but we were very much involved in it and active in it, and we are going to be working to implement it. So that's our hope, that's our plan, that's partly why we're so supportive of it. It's got some really good ideas on how to lower that number.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to put it in a pitch here because midtown congestion relief in large part is driven by Vision Zero and in addressing the multimodal fatalities and accidents within that midtown area. So that is one of the goals of the project. So anyway, my pitch. Pitch over. Okay, any other comments from the committee? Okay, any comments from the public? Okay. Hearing none, what is the will of the committee?
Well,
I'm sorry.
one comment is I just requested Scott to go ahead and get a report delivered to the policy committee members.
Okay, thank you, Jim. All right, so regarding this,
If I may, just one last one, I'm sorry. The timing on this seems weird. It's something that gets developed in the first part of the year, and now we're in the last part of the year approving it. What's the lag? Is that just sort of the general process?
So the state's deadline for setting their targets is earlier than ours is.
Yeah.
So ours is October, I believe, October.
Oh, is it October?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
interesting.
I believe so. I'd have to double check that time frame. It's just, yeah, so 180 days after their report, annual report is submitted is when DOT has to do that, and then we have X amount of time after that, so not certain why that was scheduled that way.
Okay. And has the MPO ever adopted different targets?
No, we've only done this twice, and second year in a row. And again, the biggest challenge is collecting the data. And,
Sure.
you know, there's some data that's collected by the traffic department that we utilize, but there's just so much other stuff that we don't have the ability to crunch our own numbers and figure that out, so.
Thank you.
That is weird. Data.
Yeah. What was the Dave Kemp line that caught my attention? It's like, whoa, it's a little out of date. Thank you.
okay, assuming there's no more comments, what's the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Are we doing
Second. Any objections in approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7, transit asset management performance targets. Craig, will you be?
Yes, so this is another set of performance measures. In this case, this is one we have not taken up before. One of the requirements relates to the rolling stock, all the assets, et cetera, that are owned by entities that receive some FTA funds. In this case, we have the Alaska Railroad, and we have the Public Transportation Department of the municipality that receive those, and they have their performance measures, that their targets that they need to set. I have those. You have them in the on your iPad there, and there are copies over there for both the People Mover and for the Alaska Railroad. We do not. We have to set our own targets. We don't set, confirm, approve, et cetera, either the railroad or the Public Transportation Department's numbers, but we have to set our own. And again, we don't have the capability of figuring all that out for ourselves. We have to take their numbers and accept those as is. So we are, again, we are setting those numbers based on what their numbers are. And you see that document there before. It did go before the Technical Advisory Committee, and they recommended adopting these numbers. The railroad and the public transportation numbers are just for your benefit. We're not being asked to, obviously, we don't approve theirs.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee regarding this action? Mr. Shea?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know the difference between a cutaway and a regular bus. Can you explain that?
I don't see anyone in transit here. I believe, if I remember correctly, the cutaways are the shorter ones for share a ride. I don't know if they're 20 feet long or something like that, or 30 feet long, but they're the ones that are that kind of on-demand share a ride group where they're typically point-to-point sort of thing.
Okay. And then I guess a follow-up, if I may. So one way to read this is that as far as whether it's the one point-to-point bus or just a regular bus, in the next couple years, it's like the next few years, we've got a lot more buses that are exceeding their useful life. Do these measures then set the stage for making decisions in investment in the fleet to kick in 2023, for example?
I mean, that's kind of the idea, is we're
Okay.
supposed to be tracking that and seeing which ones are really in dire need of replacement. As you know, AMATS puts a a significant portion of our CMAQ funds or our funds that are in the CMAQ table over into that, into replacement buses. We've done it since I've been here and don't see any reason to change that. So they have money of their own that they also use for that purpose, but we fund a significant portion of it.
Okay, and then one last one, if I may. I didn't see it in the transit asset management plan. What does it mean when it says that 1% of the parking structures are within, what does it say, like within a short distance of the rolling fleet? In other words, it means that there's parking structures available to the fleet and we give it a 1%. What does that even mean?
That is a spectacular question. I
It's a
do not
transit
have the
question,
answer
isn't it?
to.
Okay.
Yeah, I will have to track that down for you.
Mr. Wilson?
Thanks. So look, and I remember Jamie was at the TAC and discussed these, so that answer matched what she said.
Oh, okay.
The question came up,
Okay.
the 20-foot buses. But, so you see here pretty much where, let's say cutaway bus, 38% are at their useful life, and then we drop to 9. So that implies in 2020 we buy a bunch, right? And then similarly, say buses in 2022, 24%, we drop to 10. So when we buy the equipment, and that's using AMATS money typically, right?
Typically.
So is
I mean, they
that,
do-
have we looked, and we gotta have, I mean, these purchases must be in the
Tip,
MTP.
during the tip.
During the
They'd
tip.
also be in the MTP. Are they timed to match these? You'd hope so. If they weren't, we,
I think it's what's in the tip, and they write that based on what's,
what's in the
What-
tip?
what the
They take,
schedule's in
we
the
agreed
tip.
it for it on the tip, and they go from there. Okay.
And they don't, I know they don't buy buses every year. They probably
It
buy
doesn't look
every,
like it.
every 2 to 3.
yeah, because it takes that long to order and get them here. So they have to program out, so the tip's 4 years. So when you plan the every other year, every 3 years in the funding of the tip, then they can take that and put it into this plan, into the tracking system.
Okay, well, one would hope, and I just want to make sure that that's,
I would assume
They
that's
would
how
track
it would need to
together.
be, because when we build the tip, that's what we approve, that's what's in the CMAQ table.
okay, thanks.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've gotten an email or two asking if we're planning to switch to electric buses on people. So I'm just wondering, is that something that might be considered, or is that up to us, or?
If I may, Mr. Chairman. So I think, I don't know if they've delivered it yet, but it's my understanding that Transit will be delivering sort of a summary report / statement of the pilot project with the EV bus. And I think from that, they will tell you the answer to that question.
Okay. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Okay. Any comments from the public on the transit asset management plan? Okay. Hearing none, what is the will of the committee on this?
Move to approve? Second?
Either one. Give it to Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson gets credit. Whatever you want. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. All right, Craig, are there any other action items?
None that I know of.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item 8, project plans and updates. Any project plans or updates there, Craig?
No, sir.
All right, so hearing none, we'll move on to action, or item number 9, general information. So Craig, we already bookmarked.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, we do have an update for the MTP.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to back up to number 8 then.
I beg your pardon?
We'll go back to number 8, and
Thank
that
you.
would be your opportunity to update us on the MTP.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quickly, we will have an internal agency review draft of the MTP to DOT and municipal agencies either Friday or Monday. And then it will be out for 3 weeks, and we'll provide it to the policy committee and the TAC at the same time. And we'll want to then bring it back with comments and ask for release to the public in December. As you will probably no doubt learn in just a few minutes, we have been chastised by the Federal Highway Administration for being late with our deadline. The deadline was November 19th, and there are various reasons for that. It took a year to get the contractor on board through the municipal purchasing process. It was no fault of the contractor or actually staff either. And there are other reasons too. We've had more involvement this time from the policy committee, which was very welcome, but it wasn't the way we've done business in the past. So that's added time. And the modeling, actually, for the scenarios that we did took longer than we anticipated. So lessons learned. We won't do this again, but if we do need your help, please, to get this expedited and get it out the door, and to not have it drag on, so.
Mr. Whittleton?
To make sure it doesn't drag on, so you have something ready in a week that you'll send to the agencies and also to us then?
I want to
seeking
do that.
comments?
It will be strictly internal. Please do not share it with the public yet. It will be so that you can have a month to look at it, to get your thoughts together, so that when we do bring it to the technical advisory committee first, then they'll have their recommendations to you, and you can have your thoughts pretty well gelled, we hope, with the recommended changes you want to make before we make it available to the public. And we'll do a 30-day public review period, because then we want to make the March 2nd introduction to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that's March 2nd. We're well into 2020. So you know how it's like when they can cancel meetings, they can push you out and out. It takes an inordinate amount of time, that whole adoption process. So anything you all can do to help us stay on track or expedite that, we would really appreciate.
Okay, so we'll get this to look at for a short period of time, and you would want our comments at that point, so you may or may not integrate them into the version that would go out to the broader public. Is that correct?
Well,
That's fine, I just want to know.
Yes, we can offer, I'd like to offer a work session with you all too, in that 3-week period that the agency's going to have them, so that you can sort out amongst yourselves also what your issues are and what your concerns are. And so by December 12th, I know that's fast, or your December meeting, you will have your requested changes pretty much outlined. So you could hopefully approve it and trust staff to make those changes to get it out the door.
Okay, can I flesh out this a little bit?
Please do.
For a moment. And that sounds fine. The things that I worry about is, where you want to hold it internally. Once you release it to assembly members, it gets kind of out there, because when we work, I don't know much, but I know a lot of people who do. So we sit down with these things. What do we think, with kind of my smart friends? So it's out to the public.
Well, then would you
That's
rather
fine.
we not give it to you then yet?
I just don't know if we realistically I would like to see it, because I don't want to hold you up, and I may have comments, all of us may.
Well, it's not meant for
And if you have a
broad
work
dis-
session, it's public too.
Well, you're right, it is, it would be, but it's not a public review draft yet.
Yeah, because I appreciate that it would speed it up. I just have to, but that's the reality that we work at. I mean, for me to have something and say, I can't show it to a constituent, I don't even know if I'm allowed to do that. I mean, if it's an executive session or something, I can, but otherwise, if I have something, it's public. If someone asks, we should find that out before you send it to me and Pete anyway.
Okay, well, then I guess we'll hold off on that.
But if we send it to everyone else.
No, we'll send it
They can
to-
sit on it, but we'll find out about
Send it
us.
to internal agencies first.
Definitely do that.
And then get a clean copy to you all. But
Still have the work session.
we'll,
But then it's public again, though.
Yeah.
You do a work
It's
session.
a
You can
public-
talk about it and look at it, but it's not like they have it, anybody's got it physically. It's okay. I mean, the thing is that they're trying not to have a surprise.
Right, no, understand, but the reality is, that I think if you give us something, it's no longer private.
now, there is this other thing that the meeting, I believe, in December could be continued. Is that right, Craig?
If need be.
We could have a continuation of the meeting and still get it out in December and provide a work session in that time period. Would that be all right?
Yeah, I mean, if it works just for you, the sooner the better is fine with me.
Okay,
I just don't want
Thank
any
you.
illusion that stuff that goes to assembly members can be very secret.
I appreciate that. It's, yeah, we don't want to be out of order. So, thank you.
Good, thanks.
We'll do that.
I don't know if that helped you, but.
It does.
Did you?
Yeah, can I? So, building off of that topic, Vivian, I mean, even though there are regularly scheduled policy committee and TAC meetings, we can shift that,
Mhm.
right, to work with whatever schedule you want. So working backwards from, building in the 30 to 45 day public comment period, whichever you go with, and working backwards from a planning and zoning submission due date. If it looks like the normal cycle of our meetings would be impacted, that's fine. We just need to know sooner rather than later for public noticing purposes. And then if it turns out that agencies and committee members get an advanced prior to public review draft, but they only have 10 days or 14 days, that's also not unreasonable. So if you want to work within that framework so that we're actually setting a due date that is not too far in the future, and then work backwards from there, and we'll adjust.
Thank you so much. I think December 23rd is when we have to have the document to staff for the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's like 10-week lead time. You know, we have to have it to them. So that's why we'd really like to get this out the door in December. Otherwise, it's going to be April. It's going to be April before it even goes to Planning and Zoning.
Just to say what Chris says, I'll meet whenever and how often we have to meet to get it done on time. I'm not, that's our job.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Well, that's my news. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivian. Okay, unless there's anything else under item 8, we're going to move to item 9. General information, so Craig, we have FHWA certification update.
We had our certification review. Federal overseers, our partners came up in June, sat down with us for a while and went over our processes, all of our planning things, etc. They issued this final report October 25th, so it's very fresh. You have it in front of you. There's some copies over there. And they came up with 2 corrective actions along with some recommendations and findings, etc., talking about our planning processes. The corrective actions, as Vivian mentioned earlier, one is related to the MTP that says it must be updated by November 2020. Our due date was November of 2019. They have written into the statute the ability to have a 1-year grace period, and so we are availing ourselves of that 1-year grace period. But we were due November of this year, so next month, and clearly we're not going to be done November.
Tomorrow.
In 3 weeks' time, November 19th. So that was the corrective action related to that. And then the tip, the information on the tip, we talked about this prior, how it's not just the tables, it's a narrative. In addition, the way we had been doing our tip in the past, and amendments versus administrative modifications, we're not quite in line with what what they're supposed to be. So the main thing is needing that narrative out there, which we are working on right now. So I will point out again that there were a couple recommendations in here, but I did want to, just because I think it's pretty good to talk about, the public participation plan that we have and have had for a while. They say in here that it is the public participation process that we have is a best practice. So just so you know, we are doing some things right. Other than that, I don't know, John, if you want to share anything else. John Laurie, our Federal Highways rep, is here visiting.
Yeah, nothing really. Those two corrective actions are not real concerning to me. I mean, you didn't meet the deadline. That's pretty cut and dried. And the response that we're asking from Craig is to put together a schedule so the next one comes in within the 4 years. and the STIP narrative, we've talked some about it with AMATS staff, and they're well on their way to getting that narrative completed, so that's going to be, I think, easy fix. And I would just, say Craig and his staff were very helpful and accommodating to answer our questions and put up with us on the review, so it went well overall.
John, is there an expectation of a corrective action plan response to your certification corrective actions listed here? In other words, do you need something back from us in writing about how we're going to address the corrective actions?
That, we didn't request it in our transmittal, but that would be, I would appreciate that, reading something.
So Craig, can we annotate that and, I don't know, within, what do you think, 30 days? We
I think we could,
have a response back?
probably the December meeting,
Okay,
does that work?
that's fine. Would that be timely enough?
Yes.
For you? Okay.
I will say, just in regards to the plan for the next MTP update, we have money, as you know, in the TIP in 2020 for the update, and we are starting right now writing the RFP for that. We are kind of thinking outside of the box this time around, and, Vivian kind of went over the challenges we've had with getting some things through purchasing at times. We're thinking that what we might do this time around is put out a contract for the public involvement and a contract for the model update. We need to get the latest socioeconomic data in there, et cetera, employment statistics and population, all that sort of stuff. And then use some of the money that we have in there right now to hire a contractor who is, possibly a young planner just out of school who's got some good desktop publishing skills and things of that nature, and do it in-house. When we did the interim one a few years ago, we kind of did that. We had a contractor who did a lot of that stuff for us, and so thought maybe if we did it in-house, we would have a lot more ability to control and move things along a lot quicker. So regardless, we are starting that RFP process right now.
So the last two times we've done one of these, we started out with the policy committee, from recommendations from staff and TAC on the scope and how what would constitute the MTP, update. This one was really big because we did the whole goals and we did the criteria and the whole 9 yards. Don't know if necessarily you do all that again. That would be a question.
Yeah.
It's just maybe you do those every other cycle where you just do this humongously gigantic because of the cost.
Yeah.
But it'd be something that I would think that you would want to kind of figure out, make a recommendation to policy, just discuss that on how they want to do the cycles for, funding wise. And then decide, and then that might help make your RFP a little easier on how you want to write it. Because if you write your RFP first, then you don't know what that might turn out to be.
I think that portion of the program works fairly well of laying the ground rules here with the policy committee, so we're all on the same page, and then we can go forward. So it might not be a bad idea. You start writing it either way, but.
Mr. Wilson?
My guess is the next one will be trickier than the most recent one because we'll have a new MTP approved with somewhat different projects and parameters, plus a new scoring system, which kind of follows like there's new federal, we were looking at these new performance measures from the feds as well. So plus you're going to be just a little bit behind census data for your demographics. But there's a lot going on that'll hit.
Right, but the point is that it's just to think about and figure those questions out and have a really good discussion about it before they get too far down the road on their RFP. That's the reason I was bringing it.
Is that more of a working group action, or is that more of they figure out something and come to us with it action?
Yeah, that's what they do.
Just a second.
Yeah, and then what it is that we do like a resolution and that sets the ground rules. So if you've looked, you should pull these up for the last couple. We set very specific ground rules of the last two major cycles that kept things bounded. And so we're able to go forward without going to, sometimes it's really easy to bro.
Vivian?
Mr. Chair, I would like to address that. We did have direction from the policy committee this time to have a quick review of the goals and objectives. It was not meant to be a protracted review. And we put the goals and objectives out for public review and comment, and then we kept having, more multiple reviews through AMATS. And every week, every 2 weeks that go by, I mean, it really impacts the schedule. And I didn't want to be out of order or disrespectful, but it did impact the schedule.
And the one before that, we said there weren't any changes in the goals and objectives. I mean, what happens when you open up the goals and objectives? You draw out the process. It's a given. So one of the things to think about is if you really want to apply new criteria and you want to spend all your time in that arena, then you say, okay, we worked really hard on the goals and objectives this time around. We're going to let them sit and use them and see how they go, give them time to kind of be utilized and then see what happens. 'Cause it takes time to see how they work. But that was this time around, we said we were going to open them up, even if it was small. That was a conscious decision. The previous one, I don't believe we did. We made a conscious decision not to open them up. So this time around, maybe that's the conscious decision again, as we say, hey, we're going to do all these other things, but we're not going to open up this piece.
And that may make sense, because we'll have relatively fresh goals and objectives in the MTP. So maybe it'll make it easier than the previous times, I mean, from that viewpoint.
Yeah, I mean, it is. We didn't, 8 years ago, we didn't do it because it was even a quicker one.
Thank you.
Time will come for this discussion.
Yes. I did want to put a plug into it because I think it's really important.
My experience has been that every time it says, this is going to be an easy one, it's not.
Because of Pete.
That's not
All right. Any other information on the FHWA certification process
No, sir.
at all? Okay. All right, we're going to move on to item 10. Does the committee have any
Yeah.
comments? I'm sorry.
Could I ask a question regarding the certification?
Oh, okay.
I was surprised on page 12 of the document, under air quality.
I'm sorry, Ms. Richard, could you stand up and give your name, please, and do all the normal stuff?
Cheryl Richardson,
Thank you very much.
and I'm discussing US DOT's report for the certification of AMATS functioning. On page 12, the conformity procedures round decimals to the lowest whole number, so the PM10 concentration in Eagle River equaled the maximum allowed. So that just was surprising to me. I didn't realize this was.
That was
And then I'll do one more.
Part of the attainment, so.
I'd like
I
to,
can
yeah,
explain that.
could I just read one more, and then I'm very interested in what you have to say. But the other part I'd like addressed is AMATS, under recommendations, AMATS should closely monitor the air quality in Eagle River to avoid exceeding the allowable 5-year concentration, blah, blah, blah. Maintenance forces or contractors should perform mitigation measures such as street sweeping and application of palliative in the spring. So,
There was a bad year, for one. Two, since then, they have, municipality, DEC, and DOT have been working a lot closer together to help with the maintenance on there, and the last few years have been very good. So you'd have to take an average, and so we had a bad year where there was, I wasn't sure if it was because we ran out of palliative one year, and there was one year where they didn't jump on it early enough, but the way this is on a limited maintenance plan, okay? So which is different than the ambient air quality standard. The ambient air quality standard is 150 micrograms per cubic meter, and we're at 98, which is the goal to qualify for a limited maintenance plan, which means it's easier for AMATS to do all the modeling. So with regard to conformity. So a limited maintenance plan is an abbreviated plan, and it really cuts down the cost of the planning dollars that have to go in to support it. So everybody's very committed to maintaining the eligibility of the limited maintenance plan. On DOT, AMATS, DEC, everybody. And that we did have the second 10-year limited maintenance plan come through AMATS already. Offer public comment, there were no comments. Next month is going to go through the TAC and the policy committee, and it's going to go to the assembly to be approved. That shows that we're doing a lot better. And so, even though, yes, we were on the edgy there because of that one bad year, we're doing much better.
So what I'm hearing you say is you've had at least one rough year and things are getting better. When was that rough year? Do we remember?
Remember, Yemi, what year that was?
That was 2014.
Yeah, 2014?
Okay, thanks.
So we've been a lot of talking and putting things into place since then, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on that, so if we start having earlier breakups, which it seemed like we had a pretty early one this year, is the plan to start doing sweeping early as well? And to
It's
keep that cost
key.
down?
It's key, is the preventative, the sweep, the spraying of the mag chloride and the street sweeping. You know, the trick is, you can't put water down because it freezes and you have ice problems, so you have to have magnesium chloride. You put that down as a dust suppressant, so it doesn't get re-entrained the dust in that freeze-thaw cycle. That's the key in those few weeks right there in the spring and the fall. So,
And in the spring, you're just hoping you don't get that May 1st 6 inches of snow.
yeah, it's a weather thing, and that's why they do allow you 5 years. And there was a couple of oopses kind of compounding each other. But things so far since 2014 are moving smoothly, and the municipality does have staff. Matt Stitchett over at the health department, who is really adamant. He's always on the phone with DOT or DEC going, hey, and AMATS and trying to get, he's now sitting on the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee. So try to make sure there's that awareness and making sure that those little hiccups don't happen.
All right, thank you.
But we're definitely well below the health-based standard. As I said, that's 150, and we're at 98, so we're well below that. So that's a good thing.
All right, appreciate it.
All right. Moving on to item number 10, any comments from the committee for the general good? Mr. Whittleton?
No, thank you.
Mr. Peterson?
And the only thing I would add for the assembly members is we're looking at in the December meeting at the assembly on your consent agenda for Eagle River in the maintenance plan. And what that will then do is the DEC will take that plan and we'll go out to public comment early 2020 with Juneau's limited maintenance plan. Once that goes out to our public comment process, then we will incorporate it to the SIP and formally submit it to EPA. Only once EPA approves it does the second 10 years start. So last time around, we submitted it in 2010 and EPA didn't approve it until 2013. So our 10 years didn't start until 2013. So we're trying to get ahead of it a little bit of this time around because you need to have those 10 years, fully 10 years before you can take conformity completely off the table. And you're well into your second 10 years on your carbon monoxide.
Does that go here first and then on the assembly agenda?
Yes, it's one of the few plans that actually goes through AMATS as a recommendation from AMATS to the assembly for approval. Most of the other plans, they go through the assembly, and the assembly makes a recommendation, and the policy approves it. So the SIPs are assembly approval.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, a few things to put out for folks from DOT. Todd, am I correct saying we've now given money to the Matsu Borough for their MPO establishment?
We have established a siphon for them to start pre-MPO planning.
Okay. The census, the DF department assesses that the census 2020 will result in another municipal planning organization in the core Palmer-Westilla area. So this is an effort on behalf of the department to reach out and allow them to do some pre-planning for that. I don't know that they'll end up looking exactly like AMATS or FMATS or what, but they are moving forward in that regard.
What does that mean, you give them a site? Is that what you said?
Yeah, they requested, they put together a plan and submitted it to DOT and requested a bunch of money, and that all comes up, we only have a certain amount of money that the MPOs divide up and other money available for other communities, and we said, we recognize the fact that you're probably going to be an MPO in the next couple of years, and we appreciate the fact that you're trying to do some pre-MPO planning, so let us help. We gave them, I think, $100,000 to get started.
Oh, I think so, you give them a site.
I think you said siphon. Siphon? Is that what you said?
Stipend.
Stipend. Oh,
Siphon.
Well,
I like siphon.
Just on that, we are making a habit of the assembly meeting with Matsu and Wasilla or Palmer elected people. We did a month or two ago, or a week or two ago. And kind of agreed to have a transportation coordination, and Chris Constant from the assembly would be on that committee. But, if you're, to the extent there would be coordination with us and they used to have someone coming here to learn and stuff, but Chris would be your contact there.
And
Keep
Crystal
him-
too, right?
I think Crystal Kennedy also, thanks.
okay. Couple of other items. Like a lot of folks, DOT and the state is struggling for attracting and recruiting workers. So we are looking, January 1 to move into a 4-day work week. I put that out there because right now, if you call the department on a Friday, you got about a 50-50 at getting anybody. We went into an alternate every other Friday off event a couple, 5, 6, 10 years ago, something like that. Now we're looking at an option to do 4 days a week when you could choose either Monday or Friday off. So after the first year, Mondays and Fridays might get a little bit iffy, depending on who you're trying to get a hold of. But I wanted to put that out there. Also, another initiative that we're moving forward on in an exploratory manner is establishing officially a Matsu Department of Transportation District Office. That'll be comprised of between 20 and 30 full-time positions located from here out there permanently. We're looking at facility options right now, costs. The commissioner is excited about it. Ben Stevens is excited about it. Of course, the Valley legislators are excited about it. If you look at the STIP, we've got over $500 million of the projects in there over the next 10 years. They are the fastest growing population segment within the state. So this is all in recognition of that. So thought I would put that out there as well. So, wrapping up construction season, most of you have seen that. It is still posted for 50 in Minnesota, so careful. They are still working out there. But we issued receipts and payments of over $250 million within the central region area this year. So quite a large chunk of money, really helps out the economy. So we're very pleased we had a banner year again this year. We're excited we finally got the Jewel Lake lighting, pedestrian lighting or street lighting agreement signed with the municipality. So we will be installing lighting along Jewel Lake Road there, as per the wishes of the community out there. The state issued the municipality a $484,000, or will be issuing a $484,000 grant to pay for the maintenance and operation of those lights over the next 20 years. And I will be retired after that, so I won't care. 14 November, we are having a federal highways expert come in. We've got I guess you call it a committee or a charter for autonomous and connected vehicles. And I'm still looking for a name from you guys. I know, Craig, you're on the list.
I feel like a bunch of us got the invite.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'll probably see more than just Greg.
Okay. Yeah, I would hope so. We have state representatives on that. Todd, I know you're there. And that is the state moving forward collaboratively with the city and other municipalities and boroughs to figure out what infrastructure is going to be needed for connected and autonomous vehicles. That is certainly looming on the horizon. And so, yes, sir.
Just for information purposes, we're going to be giving a presentation on that at our Public Safety Committee meeting coming up here in November.
Right.
You got to ask those people how they're gonna handle potholes.
I'll bring that up.
Because, keeping in one lane is one thing, but when we have potholes,
Well, we must have potholes somewhere else, we can't.
we have a lot of potholes.
Can you tell us what a connected automated,
So autonomous and connected vehicles, autonomous would be a vehicle which uses software and its own sensory things to drive the car. Or full self driving. There's different levels. I'm not familiar with all the levels. The connected vehicles are vehicles that are talking to each other and are talking to other systems like traffic lights or weather stations or other sensory inputs other than just the software in the vehicle to help the vehicle maneuver and make decisions. So autonomous connected vehicles, those are not synonymous with electrical vehicles, whether you know it or not. In fact, I think you rented a car down in Phoenix, a few weeks ago, completely full self-driving, and that was a Ford Edge, I believe, a gas-burning car. So don't confuse that with electrical vehicles. That's a different construct. These are just autonomous or full self-driving vehicles versus connected vehicles, and the infrastructure they're looking at for helping those cars collect that information data. So I believe I'm right on that, John. 14 November is when your federal highway expert is going to come up and pitch that. So, okay. A few other things. Appreciate the municipality. It looks like you have a way forward on the match for hillside roads outside the Lurside, or at least a hopeful match.
We're picking and choosing. We got lots of options.
Okay.
Yes, we have it.
Well, I just want to acknowledge that because I know I had some reservations about putting that in tip when you didn't have a way to provide the match.
We just weren't telling you what it was.
But I appreciate that you're moving forward on finding a solution for that.
You did.
So, really do appreciate that. So, also, it looks like you've got a set of tire ordinance out there that you're looking to move forward.
Shortening the season.
It's pretty light duty, but it's something.
That sounds good. Other just things on the radar you've probably seen, we shut off the Glen Highway lights for all of 3 hours before Ben Stevens emailed me and told me to turn it back on. So,
And how much did you save, sir?
anyway, we're giving them a supplemental request to fund those lights. They will stay on for the meantime. So, as most of you know, those were only installed 5 or 6 years ago, but people got used to them, and apparently they like them. So we're hoping to remedy all the lighting curfews. I believe we have Minnesota and C Street also included on the lighting curfews. So we would be looking at funding for all of those actions. Of course, the other one big in the news lately is the Silvertip maintenance station closure at the Hope Cutoff there. We've gotten a lot of press about that, a lot of concerned folks about that. The commissioner issued a fairly well-written narrative about the decision points and what that really means to folks. We're not closing the Seward Highway by any means, but it will result in about 2 hours a day of possible less availability for maintenance crews to go out and plow snow. But we will make every effort to put crews on overtime as required to keep that road open and keep it safe. I know the emergency responders are concerned. The Kenai Peninsula Borough folks are very concerned. There was a reshuffling of assets within Anchorage and the Girdwood to accommodate that unmanning of that station. The result will be maybe lag times for upper hillside snow removal, whether you know it or not. So there are connected actions into the municipality for the Silvertip closure. But again, we are hoping to forward a budget that will get those 5 positions reallocated to the Silvertip, and are hopeful that that will result in remanning that station at some time in the near future. So, yes, sir.
So, delay on hillside roads,
Yes.
are you talking hours? Because now I think roughly if it's a big snow event, we're on a 3-day,
Yeah.
it could be as long as 3. So if you're 3 days of 2 hours, no one cares. But if you're 4 days, that's a big deal.
No, I don't think it'll be that dramatic. What used to happen, the graders would come from Girdwood towards Anchorage, and the graders would head south out of Anchorage towards Girdwood, and they would kind of meet in the middle. Now, the graders are going to go all the way to Girdwood because the Girdwood guys are going to Turnigan Pass. And so you have longer route times for those graders to clear those priority 1 NHS routes, which means a delay time for the priority 2 and the priority 3 routes, which I believe are the hillside routes, Todd, unless I've gotten that wrong. So I don't think you're talking about a day or days. I think you're talking about maybe an additional 6 or 8 hours. But it is an impact, and I just wanted to make clear you see Silvertip closure, but make no mistake, there are ripple effects too within the municipality, and that's what I wanted to get clear.
Okay.
So our maintenance crews are dedicated, their families are on the road just like everybody's, and they want to get out there and do the best they can. But budget constraints are budget constraints. So anyway, that is all I have as far as general comments. Are there any comments from the public at this time on any issues, informational or otherwise? Okay. Hearing none, we're going to move to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All right. Any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none. Happy Halloween.
I didn't figure they needed more snacks for the afternoon, so I figure I'll put them out tomorrow and let them all.